Take a couple till I make one.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, we'll do a few takes.
Good.
Well, let's kick it off because we have our friend and Hall of Fame guest, recurring guest, friend of the program, John Fanta, coming off an incredible tour, prepping for a wedding now. And he's got the mini hoop in the background. So if he banks it in, I mean, Hall of Fame status, elite status, we're ready to go. He's locking it in.
Let's see.
Oh,
Oh,
I tried to go for it.
off the top of the backboard.
Oh, that one off too. Come on.
Brick.
There it is.
There it is. You're looking like the Cavaliers, so it's all right.
That's right. Yeah. Well,
Hey, that's a 33% clip from downtown. What you just had. That's not too bad. You make one of your 3-3-pointers.
well, I got my own misses. I actually got offensive rebounds there. Mitchell Robinson wasn't punking me inside.
I mean, we're still playing, and you guys are enjoying an early vacation. It's okay.
Yeah. Hey, that was a beatdown and a half. And I'm wondering, as we're watching this Knicks Heat series, which is even at a game apiece, and game 2 got very dicey for the Knicks there at one point when they're down 93-87 with 7 minutes to go. The whole time I'm thinking, what does this say about the Cavs, who everybody thought was pretty good, and they could only take one game from this Knicks team? Now, that's not to say anything about the Knicks. I'm not trying to insult them. But I think it's big that the Knicks got the series evened up, obviously. But I also think there's a sinking feeling in the back of everybody's minds, if you're a New Yorker, that, wow, it took that for us to get a game from Miami, and now we got to go to South Beach. We got to do some things better if we're going to be able to win this series, because when Jimmy Butler is back, and I think he'll play this weekend, the way his body language was last night, I think Jimmy Butler, if it was a Game 7 last night, would have played. But he was eating popcorn because they had taken the game they needed to. So, look, it's all that matters is it's even up at a game apiece, and that there's a long break from now until Saturday. So we'll see if the Knicks have got to have a better showing on Saturday than they even had in game 2.
Yeah, we were talking before you hopped on. It's like, obviously, Knicks culture is back. This team needs to be playing better to advance. That's a clear-cut statement. But we were saying how this Heat squad, I mean, Eric Spoelstra has to be one of the league's best coaches. There are so many undrafted players and hidden gems on this team. I think the total, they had over 70 points of just undrafted players scoring in game 2.
Yeah, that's really amazing. Gabe Vincent has been superb for them along the way. He has become a tough shot maker. Last night, hitting a couple of shots with hand in his face. And Max Strus, a guy that was at Lewis University, not even D1, ends up at DePaul, where he's frankly off the map. And now to be doing this with Miami and to really carve out a role. I remember watching Max in Summer League, and the Heat were more impressed by his overall demeanor and the way he conducted himself than with any actual result. And that's what told them, yeah, he could be one of our guys. The Heat have a culture. And it's interesting because talking with Jay Wright earlier this week about this series, he said that the Heat are the worst matchup for the Knicks of any team left in the playoffs, including East, West, whatever, because the Heat are a mirror image of the Knicks and how they try to get things done. So this has been an old school series. This is a series for the guy out there who says, and we all know that guy. We all know that guy. He's sitting there with a beer, and he is not going to come out of his ways of saying, I don't like today's NBA. It's star-driven. It's one guy. I can't watch the product. I can't do it anymore. Whereas if we actually started to show him the game that the Knicks and the Heat are playing, it's not one star. Like, Tuesday night's game wasn't about that at all. Jalen Brunson became that star, but off of playing team basketball. So I'll tell you what, for the interesting thing is all sports cycle, right? Like baseball, I notice these teams are trying to go back to just getting base hits, especially without a shift. In basketball right now, The Nuggets might be the best team in the league. Now, they have Jokic and Murray, but if you watch them play, they do not play 1-on-5. They screen. They move the ball. It's beautiful. It's like watching dancing, great dancing. It's like a work of art. So I have learned from this NBA postseason, the NBA product is actually, it's getting better. And the viewership would suggest that.
Yeah, I haven't watched a lot of NBA, admittedly. I think Will's watched more than I have this year, but yeah, the people that say like, oh man, like I get it. There's been a huge migration to, we're talking about a few guests with this, like young kids will go on a court and say, where's the 3-point line? And they'll just start hucking up threes. But that's fun. Isn't that what makes this game fun?
It is. It is what makes this game fun. I also think that, and I totally agree with you, I also think what turned people off is when we've got guys just dribbling. Like, guess who's an example of NBA of last 10 years, for the better part of the last 10 years right now? The Phoenix Suns. Right now, Booker and Durant do not know how to get on the same page with each other because they're great individual players, but they don't have, and they also don't have a supporting cast. Phoenix is in a really tough spot. I don't think they're going to win that series. I think people are going to be surprised to see KD exit, but I'm sorry, it's just his team's not better than Denver. But I think that Jake, you're absolutely right. You know, kids want to, they do want to shoot threes, but I'd like to think that Mitchell Robinson and Bam Adebayo and Nikola Jokic has been, he's unbelievable, that they are reminding people that, hey, Kevon Looney out in Golden State, they're reminding people that, hey, if you're one of those bigger kids, go ahead and pursue it. Be tough down there. Be physical. That matters. People appreciate that. The fans love it. They still, in a world where everyone's jacking up threes, people are appreciating offensive rebounding and just being a tougher guy. And that's what this Knicks Heat series is. It is old school NBA, and it is really, really fun to watch. I also would just say, guys, the Heat without Butler, I felt like I was watching a college game at the Garden Tuesday night. They were functioning like that 12 or 13 seed trying to pull off the upset. I see Will nodding.
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. And it's like, I'm a big fan of a mean and dirty number 5, right? Especially as college basketball fans, it's like, I appreciate the center position and wish it was more prevalent in the NBA, because we're always talking about, star players and a guy, for example, that just declared for the draft in Adama Sanogo. Where is he going to end up? Because is his style of play going to translate in the NBA? Hard to say, but I think the NBA should focus on having those dominant centers back in. And Mitchell Robinson is a prime example. Joel Embiid just won the NBA, the MVP. So, go back to the mean and gritty crashing the boards, not the flashy 3-pointers. That's my opinion.
I'm with you. Happy anniversary to you guys, by the way.
Hey, thank you. 3 years.
Where does John Fanta stack up? So, John, you're not the all-time most appearances. You're a bit far off the pace. Oh, you're tied now?
He's tied.
Wow. I thought, is this 6?
This is 6.
Holy crap. John, you're tied for first now. I thought you were much farther off.
Wow.
How does it feel to be tied for all time on what you called the most innovative podcast of all time last year?
It feels great. It's an honor and a privilege. I believe that I have a certificate from this show. And
you did say it was nicer than anything in your own home last year, too.
That's true. Well, Beers, Business, and Balls has been a great pod, a pod that I enjoy tremendously because it does go all over the map. And you fellas have kept it going. See, a lot of shows, they're like, oh, we're around. They go for a year and then we never, or 2 years, and then we never hear from them again because, quote, I don't know if I can handle it, in my schedule anymore. But doing a podcast is fun, It's creative. You can get different guests on. You guys are evidence of that. And I love coming on this show because we talk about all different kinds of things. And I always love seeing you guys when I'm in Providence. I'm already looking forward to the 2023-24 New Look Friars season. But for you guys, this has been a great show, and I really, really enjoy coming on because you always feel like home on BBB. That's the way I put it. You always feel at home here, and it's like three guys on the couch talking about life. So that's what Beers, Business, and Balls is. A happy anniversary to the most innovative podcast on the planet.
John Fanta, you're a gem, and you're excited for Providence too. We always appreciate you coming on, and we will get an in-person podcast with the three of us on a couch, enjoying some beers, hopefully with a Friars win in our back pocket. But let's start right there.
I'm also going to say before you start, Will, I think Fanta does hold the record for most beers drinking by a guest on this show. I think that is a record that still holds true. COVID was a hard time, man. We were trying to get through it. And
yes.
I think by a guest, you certainly hold that record still. So
perfect. I love to hear that. Thank you. That's something I take great pride in too.
So, let's kick it off with the college basketball season. First and foremost, tip of the cap to you, because you were, I would arguably say, one of the faces, if not the face, of the media side of college basketball. I truly, we both feel that you were all over the place and you killed it in every single facet. And you obviously were there to the final moment. You were interviewing Bill Murray. You were doing all the coverage. You did an amazing job. So how was your year? How did you feel, your performance was off the court, and how did you like the product on the court?
Well, first and foremost, that means a lot. That's very humbling. There's a lot of great people who cover the sport. And for me, it really started back around this time of year when Fox had reached out and said, we're looking to expand our digital footprint and do more things on .com. And would you be looking to do some things for us? And what have we always talked about on this show? Being a yes man. You got to say yes to any and all opportunities. And of course, that got my brain going. That got my brain going of, okay, now I can do storytelling and interviews and digital content for Fox. I have a great amount of respect for my bosses in the Fox brand, and it carries weight in every circle. And for them to give me that opportunity, because a lot of the work I have been doing, the majority of it had been with the Big East Digital Network, which I still am with and love. But the goal is always to be able to expand your wings and try to cover other leagues and get across the country. And so that's what that Fox role provided for me. But this year was really a fun year. It was a great year. Just the product on the court was fantastic. So many tremendous games, big-time players. And I was actually at Fox on their LA lot the first weekend of the tournament. And in a matter of hours, covering FDU, pull that off over Purdue, covering Princeton, shocking the world and beating Arizona, and then rolling to the second weekend of the tournament, covering Furman, stunned Virginia. I still can't believe that happened. FAU's run. It was amazing to be in LA. And I had never, or at least, in my professional career, and at least 10, 11, 12 years was the last time I had sat and watched every single game the first weekend of the tournament. And I got to tell you, after doing it this past year, it's going to be hard for me to go back to just one site. It was awesome. Now, it was busy because there was so much going on, but I loved it. I wouldn't trade it for the world. Being busy is great. And we were doing video interviews and breakdowns and commentary and live reactions from our control room. It was awesome. And I appreciate you guys saying that. I think for me, what I've seen are two things. Number one, there's a huge audience for this. College basketball has a rich Twitter presence for whatever reason. So as a result, your content can really take off. And that's become the platform that I've had the steadiest following in. Number two, you've got accommodating coaches and players. I'm going to tip my cap to Dan Hurley. He always, after dealing with media for minutes upon minutes upon minutes, he would always give me a good 5 minutes on camera. And he gave a really good 5 minutes. So it's hard. It's not easy for coaches to have to do all that. And I appreciate it. But alongside the tournament are these coaching changes that just ignited the college hoops world. And I found a way to just get to these as many press conferences as I could. And getting the Rick Pitino press conference. That interview does 6 figures of views and engagements. Talking to Louis Carnesecca, who doesn't go on camera a ton. That interview explodes. The very next day, going down to Georgetown and being, I got to tell you guys, I'm just being real talk. I was the only national media person at the Georgetown press conference, which I kind of found hard to believe. But I'll get to that because I think it's a really interesting. It's an interesting takeaway from a real life event. I want to talk about the whole Cooley saga. So that comes and goes. That happens. Kim English gets hired by Providence. That press conference looked unbelievable. A lot of people asked me why I was not there. I genuinely had commitments in Houston. I would have loved to be there. Last year, Shaheen Holloway got hired by Seton Hall. I was asked to introduce him at the press conference, and I couldn't make it because I was in New Orleans. It's just you can't be two places at once, and that broke my heart to not be able to introduce him. Maybe I could have shifted my trip around, but it was locked in. But it was really a great season, guys. It was so much fun, and I saw record viewership. Record. Marquette won the Big East tournament, guys. Shaka Smart and Tyler Kolek's interviews after the game. Now, we're talking about Marquette. We're not talking about UConn. We're not talking about Villanova. We're not talking maybe about the brands that everybody associates with the Big East. Now, Marquette's going to be there now. They're here to stay. The interviews after the game, we're talking 130 to 150,000 views on Twitter. It was we had unbelievable traffic in March. And that's shows you there's a desire for this. There's a fan base for this. It really is interesting. And I have greatly enjoyed it. Now, I know it's a long-winded answer. I will get to the Georgetown Providence saga. So I think that what I have learned from the last 2 months is that being down at that press conference at Georgetown and being the only person from nationally that actually decided to go down there means two things. Means that, number one, people are going to be following you like a knife on butter for what the latest is on the situation. Two, what I've learned is that my reporting on this was not how I felt about it. And I think a lot of people think differently, think very differently. But I could tell you right now that my reporting on this of what someone was either telling me or giving me or talking to me about was not actually my opinion on this. I didn't give opinions on the situation. I think that today, Providence College is a better job than Georgetown University because there's just more that's there at Providence. Look at the two teams right now, the way that they're setting up, and you can see that Providence is set up for success today. I also still cannot believe Ed Cooley did that. But so here's the thing. It's his life. It's his life. We all make choices in life. Now, right now, on the outsider's view, I would say I can't believe that he left. Georgetown, going after a Big East coach, everybody's going to have a different opinion of that. Georgetown is in desperate need of someone who can win games for them. And yeah, your first call would have been him. Do you ever think they thought that they would hire him? No. He's got to be the one that makes that decision. He made his decision. He made his choice. He's off to Georgetown. Providence is in great hands. And they have a desirable place to win and a desirable job. So, and a fan base that, frankly, is wild to the nth degree in passion. And Georgetown's got to have that build up. So there's more work to be done with the Hoyas. And Ed Cooley has a lot of work to do. Can he do it? Well, yes, he can do it. If you say that he can't, then that's what have we been watching the last decade, right? But I think we're all still stunned. I don't think that astonishment has removed at all. I'm curious to see how this all works out. But the three of us get to cover the game when Georgetown goes up to Providence. I'm not playing nor coaching in it, despite what some people may think. Or I might carry some water to the game. Maybe I should do that. Maybe I should go holes on everybody, like the Disney movie. And
dress up like Zero.
Yeah.
That's right. Maybe I should do that. Shia LaBeouf's calling.
The Holes reboot featuring John Fanta.
Yeah, maybe I'll carry like a big office cooler of water to that game. But honestly, all in good fun. And you know what? I think today, if you guys look at the state of these two programs, there's no doubt in my mind that Providence is in a better spot.
And I think it also shows, too, where it was a stunning move, but the fact that, and again, anybody put into the situation that Kim English was put into, you were going to get judged heavily, and he came out on top. I mean, he bought into the culture. He created the mindset, right? And it's like it's all over billboards and T-shirts and all of that stuff. But also the fact that key players remained with the program, that they bought into the system as well, I think made the transition a little bit smoother and a lot more favorable for Friar fans, Big East fans, and basketball fans as a whole.
Absolutely. But it was a fascinating time because I couldn't believe I couldn't believe the direct messages inbox. Couldn't believe some of the. I mean, sometimes you genuinely. I knew that I was trying to do my job. I also knew. I also knew that some of the content I was posting was going to certainly have differing opinions on it, and reading the comments was pure entertainment.
I'm sure it was. So yeah, I'm glad you're such a good sport about the people saying like stop carrying everybody's water and all that. It's actually funny. It is.
It is funny. I mean, like I said, it was kind of you go down there. I sat down with Ed and I asked him some of the real questions. Now, I'll be very clear on this to the Twitter sphere and to the people who listen to the show. There were some people out there who were messaging me saying you are unwilling to ask the quote real questions. And all I would say is that we cover these coaches and players as the coaches and players in the basketball world. All right? Jake and Will and myself and anybody else, Um, there are questions that are fair game for us to talk about, and there are questions that we as journalists do not ask. Okay, and I don't even care. Your guys' business is not my business. There is, and that's how we conduct ourselves. So I know that there were people out there who were like, you need to ask about this, or you need to ask about that, or you need to ask about this. We're there to talk about the business of basketball. Okay. We're not there to speculate. All right. That's a big takeaway that I had from covering this whole story as well.
So we've got the Providence Georgetown saga covered. I want to talk about UConn because obviously this is a program that is now a dynasty. You can look at it, whatever words you call it. You can use the word blue blood. You can use whatever other word you want to define UConn as, but it's clear, they're not screwing around. So you covered this team pretty heavily. You were at most of the stops after the Sweet 16 with UConn. What'd you notice from this group this year?
That they took on the identity that they were not going to be told anything other than we're going to win the national championship in the NCAA tournament. They didn't care what people said. They didn't give an inkling of thought to what was on the outside. Jordan Hawkins said it best. He said, we're kind of a group of assholes, but we're nice assholes. He said that at the Final Four. And he was right. They turned into one tough MFN team. They just kicked people's behinds all throughout the tournament. It was dominance. And they figured out the fact that if they played their best, Jake, nobody could beat them. That 14-0 start wasn't just some fluke. Does the Big East humble you? I think we saw how good the Big East is. When they go on a stretch where they're just losing games, they can't figure it out. They lost 6 of 7. And you're sitting there saying, what is going on with this team? What is going on with this team? You're sitting there wondering what's happening. Right? They processed all of the tough times and they figured it out.
So in your eyes, what did happen though? Because they started off so hot. They 14-0 to start the year. And then there was, I remember, I'm sure you do too, but I'm curious if you felt this way, that a lot of people said, what the F is going on with UConn in the middle of the year? Are they a fraud? And they came roaring back, as you mentioned. But what did happen with that group?
Two things happened. One, Andre Jackson learned how he could be the right part of UConn's offense. So Dan Hurley had him stuck out on the perimeter, and Jackson was getting played off of by the defense. When he was on offense, he was unsure of what to do. What they did is they moved Andre Jackson to the baseline, or they moved him to make movement in the offense, move off screens, get to the rim. Everything became, we're going to get this guy active to the rim. He's not a perimeter shooter. Maybe that'll come if he gets confident hitting shots at the rim. And then it did come. So for me, that was number one. Jake, number two is Tristan Newton.
Yeah.
Tristan Newton became a different player in the last 6 weeks of the season than he was previously. He was great. He was money. He was in rhythm. He initiated things. He hit big-time shots. I just thought he took on the identity of a Connecticut point guard. It started with a mentality approach that I referred to with what Hawkins told me. But strategy-wise, you got to give Dan Hurley a lot of credit. This team, defensively, was a solid enough team. Now, they went through a bad run. That's another thing. Their man-to-man defense when they were losing games, when they lost at home to Xavier carved them up. Carved them up. Their defense could not.
That more too, because they had a few of those games down the stretch that they collapsed, right? I'm sure you remember Seton Hall at the Rock was a game that they should have won. and they lost in the late stages. The same deal with Xavier, obviously, walking into their home turf and picking them off, right? Is that more of the teams they were playing just getting hot at the right time, or was that UConn's defense collapsing?
A little bit of both. UConn leveling off, and you can't possibly be unbeaten. And then how do you deal with losing? They didn't deal with losing well.
Right.
But the other thing is this. They allowed their missed shots to dictate how they defended. So when a lot of people are like, well, they became a better defensive team. I mean, maybe they were more conscious guarding. But you know what they did? They said, how do we become a better offensive team? For us. How do we get Jackson in the right place? How do we get Tristan Newton playing point? How do we realize, and Jake, they realized this. They realized that Jordan Hawkins is a top 15 NBA draft pick. And they said, we're going to start feeding him the ball, and we're going to just let him cook. I also think they did a great job in season ensuring that Adama Sanogo didn't get gassed and didn't get worn down. That's why Donovan Clingan was so important. He was the perfect complement to Sanogo, to giving Sanogo a break. And Sanogo didn't wear down, and he was an All-American. So a bunch of contributing factors. Depth was real with this team. They had several options between Naheem Aline off the bench, Joey Calcaterra. They had those options. But it was also that I think that their rut was a product of Big East basketball, not handling losing well, but then sometimes allowing what you did on offense to then dictate what you do on defense. And what they said is, how do we fix this offense? And they fixed it. They really did.
I mean, they looked like a well-oiled machine. They were physically unstoppable in this tournament. I mean, there was never a single point in any of their 6 games that you thought, wow, UConn's in serious jeopardy of losing this one. Not once. Not once. And it's incredible. Speaking of that, you interviewed, this has to be top 5 or 1 interviews of your lifetime. I mean, you interviewed Bill Murray after the UConn Gonzaga game. That's not something where everybody knew what was going on. Everybody said, wow, what the hell's Bill Murray doing at this game? Obviously, he's Luke Murray, the assistant coach's father, but how cool is that for you? Did you have to pinch yourself? Like, you've called national broadcasts with Bill Raftery. You've done all of this cool stuff. But I would imagine that was a special time interviewing one of the most recognizable actors that's alive right now.
Yeah, it was really cool. It was really, really cool. It was absolutely an item that you never even put on the list. You never even say, like, I want to interview Bill Murray someday. But he is Luke's dad, who's on the UConn staff. And he was sort of pacing around the floor after that Elite Eight game. And I just simply went up to him and I said, Bill, would you be willing to talk with me for a moment? And he was given the sign-off by his daughter-in-law. And here we go. We went. And I didn't know where that conversation was going to go. It turned into a chicken fried steak in Houston. It was fantastic. He could not have been kinder with his time. And I'll tell you what. You know what I always say to people? If you look at somebody and you think, maybe I want to interview them, the worst thing they could tell you is no. And then they kind of look like the jerk.
Yeah.
Just go up to him and say hello. And that's what I did. And he was amazing with his time and funny and talking about going to a birthday party and that he couldn't conduct himself all day in Vegas. He didn't know where anything was. He was Bill Murray in the flesh. I felt like we were not acting, but I felt like I was in an SNL skit at the time in those 2 minutes. It was great. It was that's one I will never forget. It truly will never forget. Jake, you said it best. I mean, you don't even imagine doing those things. And there he was.
I was going to say, right? Like, that's not something you go into this world thinking like, yeah, I'm going to interview Bill Murray and that's going to be the highlight of my career. But it's one of those things you could even tell. You approached it, you went up to him and said something like, well, you've been to a lot of sporting events. You know, where does this rack up? Because you can't ask him to break down offenses and things like that. But God, what an awesome experience that must have been.
Thank you, Jake. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.
Off that too, I mean, Dan Hurley was a guy that really showed this year that he's open to the media, right? He spent a lot of time with you guys. He showed that he's sort of a down-to-earth guy as well. So, I mean, for you, what were your favorite moments of getting to know Dan Hurley this year? And what were some of those things that he said that really opened your eyes?
What I learned about Dan was just how big of a family guy he is. His wife, Andrea, means everything to him. You know, he told me about his time at Seton Hall. And Dan had a tough path. He had a tough path. At Seton Hall as a student, he did run into some drinking problems, and his wife really saved him. Andrea really saved him, along with some people that are at the university. And he's indebted to them, and he really does love his wife with a passion. So I just look at Dan as being a great family guy, being a guy who just takes the job so seriously, too seriously. It's like a drug to him. That's what I learned about him. It's like a drug. He figured out, though, Jake, that if he let this team play, if he let them go, he assembled this roster. He assembled this group. He'll get them to run sets. He'll get them to run actions. But he doesn't need to argue with any ref because his team's better than the other team if they played to the level they're capable of. I think they really focused on themselves. I think Dan focused on himself. I think we saw him take a huge maturity step this season. Huge. In the last month and change of the season, he let his team play. That's a sign of a great coach. They don't get in the way. They let them go. And I'll tell you what, I was really impressed. I was really impressed by his evolution. But the kind of family guy he is, the kind of leader he is, all those things and more, Dan Hurley shined. He shined this year. And I learned that he's a unique individual. He's a guy who likes hot yoga and saging a court, putting incense around the court. He's a unique individual, but there's only one. He's one of one. And he really takes ownership. This job affects him personally in a big way. He takes his work home with him. His work is his life, and he wants to win. And in a lot of ways, that fits Connecticut because there's a heavy passion to win.
When you were in school at Seton Hall, he was coaching at Wagner, and then he went to Rhode Island, obviously. Was there, I don't know if you had a relationship at all with him or covered Wagner at all, but do you look back on those and say, well, yeah, this all makes sense because of how he was then? Or like, is there a little bit of element to, wow, we should have seen this coming?
Well, I think that when you look at what he did at Rhode Island, he won multiple NCAA tournament games at Rhode Island. You have to look at that and say, wow. I mean, he did a great job at URI. He lifted the standard there. So when you do that, yeah, we should have seen it coming. We should have. I think we all knew that he would elevate UConn. I think there were doubters that UConn could still be what they were, Jake. There shouldn't have been. The move back to the Big East really helped UConn in so many ways. And it helped the Big East in even more ways. So I think that all of that made for the perfect storm. But, yeah, this shouldn't be a surprise. Connecticut's got rich tradition, top-end resources. They're a state school. They have a great fan base, and they can get top-end talent. They have everything you want in a winning program. And I think you also have to credit Dan's staff. I mean, Kamani Young's ready to be a head coach. Tom Moore's been in that spot, and Luke Murray could be a head coach.
And that's that's a big point with this program that I was going to bring up too. I mean, you look at Kamani Young, he's got grassroots New York basketball experience. He's a developer. You look at Tom Moore, who's Connecticut basketball royalty at Quinnipiac and other schools. And then Luke Murray, who was he was talking as recently as a couple years ago. He emerged as a potential candidate when Fordham was looking and some other openings. Like, you know, I wonder how much of that, I guess my point is I wonder if they're going to stick around? And are they Hurley guys, or are they, like the way that Hurley talks about Young? Is he a future head coach potentially, right? So, I mean, how much credit you have to give to this assistant coaching staff is just instrumental.
Yeah, you have some guys who are more than capable of being head coaches. You have some guys who have turned down head coaching opportunities to continue on at UConn because they're making great money. They're making as much, if not more, than what some of these other jobs would pay. Not as much, but close to it. And UConn can pay them, and they like being there. They like being on the mountaintop. And when you taste it, you want more of it. Do you want to go to a job that's in the America East or the NEC or the MAC? I love those conferences. And take that job and have to build. It's hard. It's hard. Now, ask Jared Grasso right now how he feels.
Yeah,
it's not easy because you could be a really good coach, but it might take time for you to finally level up. Whereas maybe if you stay around at UConn, you keep winning at a very high level, you might get a job that you might not have otherwise gotten because you've won to the degree you've won at UConn. I think that's why Kamani sort of waited.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I think it speaks to the culture there, right? It's like, this place, I loved your column at the end of the year where you sort of let it off with how to get to UConn, right? You get off I-84 and you just see woods and random farms and things like that. And your first question is, why am I in the right place? But it's the basketball capital of New England, some would argue. Which leads to my point. Do you have any good food recommendations up there? Because there's a lot of those too.
There's a lot of those. I mean, up by stores doesn't have a ton of great places to eat.
Yeah, I guess like Wellington, Mansfield, Tolland area.
Yeah, you'd have to go over there. I mean, I like the oh my gosh, how am I dropping this name right now? Hold on a second.
Not Ryan's Deli, are you thinking of, right?
No, I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. I like Ted's Bidwell Tavern.
Oh, sure.
Tavern is great. I love the Bidwell. Their wings are excellent. They have live entertainment. I'm a huge fan of the Bidwell. I like Ted's for some Mexican food. I do end up over there.
And the cheap beer helps too.
And cheap beer helps too. And where's my other place that I frequent over there that I enjoy? I'm
going to put in a shameless plug for Wellington Pizza over there too. Not bad.
Yes.
You got to get over there if you haven't.
Yes, Wellington Pizza. I've never been to. I've never been to Wellington Pizza. Yeah, so there's a couple of those spots. Wellington Pizzas. I'm going to add to my. I just see Wellington Pizza. They have 4 stars.
There you go. Not too bad.
Look at you. Okay. All right. It's on there.
Wellington Pizza. John Fanta may just put the stamp of recommendation on it, folks. We'll see.
I'm gonna. Oh, Red Rock too. I end up at Red Rock sometimes. Yeah. I like this. You're delivering me a recommendation as well. So those are some of the spots I enjoy.
Well, we may have to come out and take the hour 15, hour 20 or so ride on all back roads from Rhode Island to come see a game this year. Meet you over there. We'll go get some pizza. We'll go hit a game at Gamble. Love it.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
Plan.
That would be great. That would be great.
That being said, as we start to sort of go towards closing this out, you covered a lot of moments. What do you think, besides what we've already talked about with the Providence-Georgetown saga, with UConn this year and making the run they did, what was your favorite moment to cover that wasn't any of those?
Well, I just think FDU was amazing. Tobin Anderson and the Knights to take down the college basketball equivalent of Godzilla in Zach Edey and Purdue was absolutely unbelievable. Just stunning. And whereas UMBC beat Virginia and it was a blowout, Virginia was missing a key player in that game. But nonetheless, UMBC won that game in commanding fashion. This was a game, a tight game. And when the game was in the balance, FDU was making all the plays. It was really, really unbelievable. for a school in Teaneck, New Jersey, for a school that frankly, if you talk about basketball programs in the country, Jake, they have to have some of the least amount of resources that you would find. And for them to pull that off, wow. Unbelievable. I love the story, everything about it. And just this New Jersey dimension for Princeton.
Yeah.
I mean, that team, Kosan Awolma, he became one of everybody's favorite players in the tournament.
I mean, he's already on the top tournament, like all tournament teams, as a scrappy forward from Princeton. That's unbelievable.
He was amazing, and they went on an unbelievable run. They didn't beat Missouri; they crushed Missouri. That was not a game, and they lost to Creighton, but they played Creighton really tough. But yeah, I was so impressed by them, and then just Kihei Clark. Kihei Clark delivered one of the all-time passes in NCAA tournament history when
for the wrong reasons.
Beat Purdue, and he delivered one of the all-time worst passes in NCAA tournament history when he threw the ball away. And Pegues, JP Pegues hits an amazing shot for Furman to help them to shock the world, shock Virginia. And for the Furman Paladins, that was a defining moment for them. So I loved it. It was the tournament in all its glory. And
that's
Lamont Butler, San Diego State, Lamont Butler was literally steps away from that. I was on that side of the floor in press row and saw that like here. It was unbelievable watching that live.
I mean, for the people that say you had a really interesting tweet to this, and you were listing out all of this mayhem, right? It's like this many 1 seeds gone, this many 2 seeds gone. We've got a 9 versus a 5 seed in the Final Four. And for those people that say, wow, that sucks for this sport, it's just, first of all, it's so untrue. But, number two, what do you say to the folks that for college basketball, they're just not on like they are maybe the NBA, like we talked about at the beginning of the show, for the reason that, the best teams don't get to the final weekend? What do you say to those folks?
What are you watching? Come on. Do you want it to always be predictable? Also, these teams were really, really, really good. San Diego State has gotten disrespected nationally, but that program has had a wildly strong record over the last 4 or 5 years, Jake. So to the people who said that they're not as good as other teams, they were tougher than almost every team in the country. 32-7. It's not like this team lost 10 or 11 games or lost a bunch of games in the Mountain West. They lost 3 games in the Mountain West. Mountain West is a good conference. It's become a really strong conference at the table. So I don't want to hear it. Miami was the most dangerous team in the ACC throughout the season. Isaiah Wong and Nigel Pack, that backcourt, if you named best backcourts in the country, they were up there. So, and FAU, you know what? They got misseeded. FAU got misseeded. I don't know what the committee could have done differently. We've seen this happen before. But, look at the tournament. Memphis was tough as nails. Memphis almost beat FAU. Like, these games come down to 1 or 2 possessions. You're going to have variance. You're going to have different teams. To me, the biggest disrespect is San Diego State. Because San Diego State, I'm doing the math in my head right now, in the last 4 years now, has gone 108 wins. 108 wins to 23 losses.
Oh, my God.
To 23 losses last 4 years. Come on, people. You have to realize how good this program is. So I don't want to hear that the best team wasn't included. We saw great teams. We watched the tournament for the art of the upsets. And previously, your argument might have been somewhat valid if the upset teams eventually fizzled out to a large degree. But those upset teams, Jake, kept it competitive when they were advancing. They really did.
I have nothing additional. That was perfect. That was beautiful. A beautiful homage to the sport. I did not know San Diego State was 108 and 23 in the last 4 years. That's ridiculous.
Unbelievable.
Credit to Brian Dutcher, but I mean, he's done this before. He's built the Fab Five at Michigan. A couple other guys on his coaching staff did the same thing. It's a guy that knows what he's doing. So a beautiful sport, truly is. You have recently got into the TikTok world. So firstly, should we expect some, are you going to do some dances, or are you going to, maybe, what content, on a serious note, what content should we see?
Yeah, you'll see basketball breakdowns. You'll see some sports takes and breakdowns. I might venture into some of my other sports areas and go on some rants where people can check that out.
You can't at least try the gritty or something?
No, I'm not going to. I'm not going to make myself look ridiculous. We'll go to some restaurants maybe. I might do some food takes of, here's when I go out to dinner, here's what I order. I think a lot of people are genuinely interested. Maybe based on some of the tweets. So we'll do some food. We'll do some hoops. We'll do some rants. I think I'm trying to think of something where I can, do 45 seconds on this Hunter Dickinson situation. Sometimes, Jake, I have these quick thoughts, and I typically will tweet them. So I'm like, you know what? How can I put them in a quick TikTok? And are people interested in that quick take? I actually think
yes, they are. They're very interested in that stuff.
So I'm thinking of doing that. I'm excited for that. TikTok's very different, and I'm looking forward to kind of venturing into that world.
I think I love the food ideas. That's pretty fun. You go somewhere to eat, you do a little quick review. People eat that stuff up. No pun intended. I just said
yeah, they do. No, they do. You're right.
That being said, what are some of the new food spots you've hit up in Jersey? Because you've recently fled to the suburbs. You've been there for a while now, actually.
Yeah,
right?
I'm in Boudin now. So I'm looking out at the woods. I'm in North Jersey, and yep,
there's no skyscrapers. Are you confused on where you ever wake up in the middle of the night? Like, oh
yeah, you're right. No, I mean you wouldn't know it from Ohio just by looking out my window, which I love. I love being up here. We love being up here, and we've got more spots to hit. We love going in Boudin. We love going to Delizia's. They have great pizza. We love going to Roma's. They have great pasta. We love going to a place named Chili Willie's. I just hope there's someone around New Jersey that's listening to this that can say, "Oh my gosh, I go to those places too." In Denville, the pasta shop is amazing. Sergio's is fantastic. There's a bunch of really good spots. South Orange, near my alma mater. I love heading to Reservoir for dinner. It's cash only. That's when you know it's really good. But yeah, there's fortunate to have a bunch of really good eats. I'm trying to think of other spots. You know what? When I'm around St. John's, I hit Acquista's. I love Acquista's for Italian food. I really, really do. It's great stuff. Where else here?
That's a good point. Has Rick Pitino identified his favorite spots over there yet, or no?
I don't know. Maybe we'll have to see what he's been busy putting together a roster. They've made several additions here now. I mean, 7 or 8 guys that have come on, and I think they've got 1 or 2 more roster slots, and things are lining up for them quite well. But, or at least solidly, anyways, heading into his first year at the helm. There's not a more compelling storyline, in my opinion, than Pitino in New York. I just think it's
it makes sense, right? It's a beautiful harmony that this guy that, he did what he did. He served through his investigation. He cooperated. He was basically exonerated. And now he's back in the Big East again. There's no better story than that. That's wild.
Yeah, you're right. You are absolutely right. It has been a wild story. And it has been a story that I look at and say, how does this story come to an end? Pitino has had the ups. He's had the downs. The 30 for 30 on him will be amazing. What's the conclusion of this story? Does it end in winning fashion? Does it end with a championship? What if Rick Pitino won the Big East championship under the bright lights of Madison Square Garden? Does he go out on top? We'll see. I wouldn't bet against him.
Wow. That's just fascinating to put that into perspective when you're like, wow, this documentary is going to be incredible, because it is. He is one of the most interesting men in this sport right now, because he's coached at the high school and pro level internationally. He's coached at Providence. He coached at BU. He's coached the Boston Celtics and the New York Knicks.
Yep.
And then he's coached, obviously, he did his Louisville. He took his time off, and then he went back to Iona, started again, rebuilt his legacy. And he gets to potentially, all bets would consider probably this being his last stop, right? As he goes into his 70s. But wow, what a story. That is incredible. And he seems to be embracing this, I think he seems very grateful. I'm not sure if that's your perspective.
He is very grateful. He is grateful. This is a thrill for him. He's excited that they gave him an opportunity. A lot of people didn't think that would ever happen. But Brian Shanley, the former Providence president, was not going to let a Providence guy go. Yeah. Really. And Rick Pitino loves Providence, always has. If that job had opened and there had been other circumstances, he would have taken that. But for him, New York City, St. John's, he doesn't have to move. His wife doesn't have to move. They're in good shape.
Yeah. It's incredible. We'll do one last NBA pulse check here. We already talked about the Knicks in Miami, but I want to talk about the Lakers and the Warriors as well. This could be the last time, and people say this every year, but it could be the last time we see Steph and LeBron facing off in a high-stakes playoff game together. Is this something that, I feel like a lot of people don't appreciate the significance of what we're actually watching here? I mean, what does that mean for this sport to have these guys go at it again in their mid to late 30s?
Yeah, it's outstanding. It's fantastic for the league. We don't realize how great they are. LeBron James is a transcendent player who has just he's redefined the NBA over the course of his career. And about halfway through that point, Jake was a guy who's come in and redefined the three-point shot, redefined the perimeter game. Steph Curry changed basketball. LeBron James changed basketball. Make no mistake about it. Kevin Durant's really, really good. He hasn't changed basketball. All right? Joel Embiid hasn't changed basketball. Giannis is an interesting player. He's unique. He's a unique athlete. But he hasn't changed the game, right? These guys have changed the sport. LeBron James is responsible for an era, if not multiple eras. Stephen Curry is responsible for a legitimate principle change in how the sport is played. So this is a textbook type of series, right? When you're in 4th, 5th, 6th grade and you have the history book, or you're starting to learn about different things through time, and at the end of the unit, they also show oh, this happened in sports, or that happened in sports, and you kind of laugh because you're like, oh, that was the one part that I knew. I didn't know the other stuff that happened that year. This is going to be something that we talk about, and whether it's this series or another, LeBron James and Steph Curry are. When people talk back in the day, Bird and Walt and Wilt, and when they talk about those greats, right? This is what today's greats are to the highest degree. And at the end of their careers, this is not at the end necessarily for Steph, but who knows how much longer he has of this level. LeBron has sort of aged like this fine wine, where he's just kind of figured out how he needs to make it work at his age, and he's done a great job of it, Jake. But these are two guys who have redefined the way the game's played, and this series is really special. In a lot of ways, it's a celebration of the last decade and change of basketball, because these two have shaped the way the league is. and I think it's become an amazing face-off. And honestly, my pick is the Lakers.
Wow.
I think that they're playing better, and I think that the Warriors' defense is of huge concern. And Anthony Davis is unbelievable when he decides to be. So I'm going to side with LA.
Yeah, when he decides to play, for sure. With that being said, do you think the Lakers have the juice to go the distance this year? Like they win this one against Golden State, you think they can go all the way?
The Lakers?
Yes.
They've got LeBron James and they've got Anthony Davis, and Austin Reeves has fit into this role, and they've developed a supporting cast that's done a nice enough job. Abso-freaking-lutely, the Lakers can win the world championship. Absolutely. And if LeBron James wins that title, if he wins this year, I think that the arguments are over. I really do.
I think you're probably right. It is. A lot of people said that about Tom Brady, too. It's like, all right, one more ring, right?
Yeah, one away. Yeah, LeBron's one away from putting anything that you've got to bed. So if they could beat the Warriors, now, I got to tell you, Denver, LA would be incredible from a basketball standpoint. Denver's for real. They are getting totally overshadowed. I don't know why. I know why. They play in Denver, and they don't have LeBron or KD. So in the West, there's only so many headline takers. The Nuggets are outstanding. I think the Lakers can win the title. I think the Nuggets will beat them in a series, and I think the Nuggets could be the champions. I'm going to take the Nuggets to win the NBA title.
Wow. So in that vein, who's coming out of the Eastern Conference? We talked about how good the Heat are. Boston's an option, but the Sixers are looking like they took game one in Boston, which TD Garden is cursed, mind you, I think, after the past week or so. Who do you like out of the East?
Yeah, I'm still going to take Boston. I think they figure it out, and they still find a way in this series. I think it was a reality check, a tough loss. But I just think Tatum and Brown and this team, my concern with Boston is their defense.
Yeah.
They have not defended well in the playoffs. Miami's tough. I mean, I got to tell you, and maybe it's just my lack of faith in the Sixers' big picture, but I think Miami's going to beat the Knicks. I think it'll be Miami and either Boston or Philly, and then, man, I mean, I might side with Miami, but my pick will be the Celtics. I think that they got it out. They find a way.
How cool would a Boston-New York Eastern Conference final be, though? Like,
yeah, either or.
Boston for that.
Oh, it would be amazing. Knicks Celtics would be amazing. Knicks Sixers would be amazing.
Yeah, true. Yep.
New York Philly would be unbelievable. Would be really incredible because you got passionate fan bases wherever you look. But yeah, a Knicks Celtics Eastern Conference Finals would be a ratings machine for Adam Silver. He would be Scrooge McDuck in the gold coins.
Oh, yep. Man. That would be certifiably incredible.
Yes, it would be.
Wow. Yeah, to close out, thought we were going to get Will back by now, but it's but we're rolling. He got his questions in before. Crystal ball, right now, where do you think Hunter Dickinson's going? If you're privy to say.
Yeah, I think he'll end up at Maryland.
Yeah.
I think he'll stay close to home. I think he's going to go close to home. And I think he ends up playing for Kevin Willard. If not Maryland, I think Kansas.
Yeah. Interesting.
This is a fascinating situation, though. I know there's a lot of people who are kind of annoyed with this, or they get it. But you know what, Jake? Hunter Dickinson is worrying about Hunter Dickinson. And he has maximized his brand and maximized NIL to the nth degree. And people might be rolling their eyes or whatnot. I think he's a genius.
Yeah.
I really do. I think he is Aaron Rodgers' situation. And Aaron gets hated on, but now Aaron made his decision and it's done. But for a while, who was the center of the discussion in the NFL? Aaron Rodgers. They say if you're getting talked about, it's a good thing. Hunter Dickinson's been talked about quite a bit. It's good for college basketball. College basketball has a really interesting storyline in May.
Is he a villain, do you think?
Yeah. Yeah, but there's not – but I like villains. Like, I also think we need villains. Villains are good. Why does a show have a villain? Because they're good for the show.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's a villain in a bad way. I think he's a different cat, and I don't mind it.
He's more of a heel than a villain, right?
Absolutely. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Because he's a good dude. He seems like genuinely like a good guy, but I think he's also easy to root against.
Good dude, but yes, no question about it. No question about it.
He's a heel. He's college basketball's heel. I can't name you a better one than he is right now.
No.
Maybe Ed Cooley, but that's it.
Right.
Well, Ed Cooley, it depends on who you ask. They might have more strong words than villain for him.
That's true. It depends on who you ask. Yeah.
What a world. That'll be a very cool storyline to follow. John Fanta, this is your 6th appearance. Any closing thoughts for appearance number 6 on the Beers, Business, and Balls podcast?
Well, great to move into a tie for first place. Not sure how the tiebreaker gets determined. Maybe it's a drink off. In that case, I think I would win. But Beers, Business, and Balls has been fantastic to me. And it's great to be on with you guys again for number 6. Lucky number 7 is next. We just need the extra point. Like my Browns need a kicker. I'm going to try to get through the uprights next year, and I can't wait until that time comes. But I appreciate you guys. Happy anniversary, and happy anniversary. Triple B is the best.
Triple B going for 3 years. I like it. I love all the threes there. Yeah, we'll save the Browns talk for another day once we get closer to the season. But can't thank you enough, sir. Best of luck with you. And you got a wedding to plan for. So enjoy that. Enjoy that time, and we will see you soon.
Thanks, Jake. Appreciate you. And great to be on with you guys, as always.